And I remember just this specific moment, and I really feel like God has, I don't know, sown this into my spirit and heart, if that makes sense. There was just this moment where I just felt like spiritually, physically, emotionally, mentally, I just hit a wall. Like I just come real fast, real hard, right up to a wall, and I thought, I can't do this. Today I want to share the story of Woodrow's birth. He is my first child and I love him so much. He's such a blessing. I want this video to be a resource for expecting mamas. I also want to just share his story here with our YouTube family. So many people have prayed for me and him, and that means so much to me. And I want to share the story of his birth so you can see that your prayers were absolutely answered. And I also just want this video to be a testimony of just how good God is, because I could not have done this without him. Of course, I could not do anything without him. So first I would just share the story and then share some advice for expecting mamas, and then I'll really talk about how I just really seen God's hand in my labor and delivery of sweet little Woodrow. So he was due in mid-June of this year, 2024, and he was born towards the end of June, and I was 41 weeks exactly when he was born. So he was late, and I wanted to try to give myself every opportunity to go into labor on my own before I had to be induced. So I had contractions for several days, and nothing serious, nothing real intense or anything like that. And then on a Thursday morning at about 3:30 a.m. I woke up with contractions, and I just noticed they were different. They were more intense, closer together. So I had them all that day, all that night. Really by Thursday night is when they got kind of even more intense, and I thought, well, okay, I'll keep watching this. And then woke up Friday, had them all day Friday, and as the day went on, they definitely got more intense. And you hear people say, well, when you get to a point where you can't talk through them anymore, you kind of need to pay attention, because that could be a signal it's time to go to the hospital. So all day Friday, I debated, should I go to the hospital? Should I not? I just wasn't sure, because as soon as they would the contractions would become timeable, then they would space back out, and I didn't want to go to just have to come back home. But by Friday evening around 4 or 5 o'clock, I was in my bedroom kind of leaning over the birth ball, and I had this one contraction, and I thought, yeah, I think it's time to go to the hospital. It was just more intense, and I thought maybe we should just kind of go on. Of course, we had our bags packed, so my husband Austin and I got in the car and went on to the hospital, and it's about 30 minutes away from us, and we got there just fine, and we checked in the emergency room, because that's just how they do at our hospital, and we went up to labor and delivery into triage. They put me on a monitor and they checked, and I was 1.5 centimeters dilated. And that was exciting in one way, because I had just had an appointment on Monday where there was no change, but it was also like, only 1.5, and I need to go to 10. So I stayed in that room for maybe an hour and a half or so, and just so they could monitor and check. And then when they come back and they checked, they said, you're still 1.5 centimeters. And it was kind of funny. They, of course, could track the contractions on the monitor, and they said, it doesn't seem like your contractions are very strong. And I was just thinking, what? Because that whole time while it was just me and Austin in that room, he timed them, and they were like 2 minutes apart, and they just were super intense. And so I thought, man, they're going to come back and I'm going to be 4 or 5 centimeters. But I wasn't, and that's okay. So it was at this point I found out that I had tested positive for strep B. I did not know that. And so they decided to go ahead and admit me. They called the doctor, and then he said, yeah, let's go ahead and admit her, even though she's only 1.5 centimeters, because they wanted me to get a dose of antibiotics in my system before I had him. So they admitted me. We walked down the hallway just a couple doors down, and this was actually the exact same room 3 months before that my sister Katie had given birth in. And so that was kind of cool. It just was kind of comforting, because I'd already been in that room. I already knew what it was like. And then one of the nurses already that I had already seen at that point was one that I had met when my sister gave birth. So that was kind of nice. And so at that point, I think maybe it was like 8 o'clock in the evening. And so Katie came, and they started an IV, and they took blood and put me on another monitor. They just did all those things. And so from there, things got, I don't know, kind of slowly more intense, but it wasn't anything that I couldn't stand. And I was a little bit nervous when they were doing the IV and taking blood. Not because of that. I'm not afraid of needles whatsoever, thankfully. But I just felt nervous because you don't know what to expect. And I thought, okay, here we go. And it was really sweet. Katie was there, and I told her, of course my husband was standing right there, but I told him, I'm just feeling nervous and I'm gonna have to get a hold of myself. And Katie said, well, do you want me to pray for you? And so she prayed, and that was that was very sweet. And so around, I guess, 10 p.m., the doctor came by and he checked, and I was still only 1.5 centimeters. And oh my goodness, just to be completely honest, I felt so disheartened at that point, because I thought, from like 5:30 or 6 to 10, I'm still having, contractions, and it seems like they're picking up, and there's not that much change. But that was okay. So he decided to go ahead and break my water, and it was kind of funny. Then he said, all right, now we're committed to having this baby tonight. And I said, well, okay. So after that, things got intense. Once your water's gone, you don't have a cushion against those contractions anymore, and it was tough after that. So I labored for a while, and I ended up deciding to get some pain meds through the IV, and I went in not wanting pain meds, not wanting an epidural, not wanting anything, but I decided I would get some pain meds through the IV, and then they gave me some anti-nausea medicine, because just from the whole thing I was feeling a little bit sick. That helped me some, but it made me incredibly drowsy, very drowsy, and I was already very tired by that point because I had been laboring for so long. So I labored like that for a while, and it was tough. I'm not gonna lie, it was fairly tough. And Katie and Austin, supported me and helped me. And in my mind at that point, I thought, I'm gonna get that epidural. I didn't want one, but when they come back, I will get one. Well, they came back and checked, and I was 8 centimeters, and I said, no, I'm not getting one if I'm this close. I'll probably, in a couple minutes, I'll probably be pushing, and in a couple minutes, he's going to be born. I'm not getting an epidural. So the doctor came back, and I think this was around maybe 1 o'clock or so in the morning. And so he came back, and then it was time to push. And I pushed, and I pushed, and I pushed and pushed and pushed some more, and no one was saying anything, and nothing was really happening. And I thought, well, I'll just keep pushing, and eventually I'm going to hear, we can see his head. And I pushed for a long time, and I just never heard anything, and nothing was really happening. And I was so tired and so drowsy that I just remember I would push, and then I would lay my head back and be almost virtually asleep. And I went on like that for a little while, and eventually we figured out that he was sunny side up. So he was facing the wrong way, and that's why he was having such a hard time coming out. And so they ended up putting a squat bar up on the bed, and I didn't do that for very long, but that actually helped. That felt kind of the most comfortable position. And he ended up having to be a vacuum assist, because he just was facing the wrong way and he just would not come out. So it took 2 hours. It was 2 hours from start to finish of pushing, and it was tough. That's by far the hardest thing that I think I've ever done. And but he was born, praise the Lord, and he was good. He had on his head, and it's way better now, but he had a hematoma, but just from like the trauma to him of trying to come out in the vacuum. I ended up needing several stitches because I had an almost 3rd-degree tear, but other than that, everything was fine. I was very tired, but everything was fine. And it's crazy. I'm still digesting and processing everything that happened, and having a baby is just such a magical, wonderful blessing, and it changes you. You're not the same person. Even just being pregnant, I just felt like a page had turned in my life, and I was no longer the same person. And it's just a beautiful, wonderful thing, but it's so rewarding, and I'm so thankful for our doctor. He is just absolutely amazing. That was such a blessing to me. He is just so gentle and kind, but very skilled, if that makes sense. And I think it really helps if you have a really good doctor. He's got really good instincts and a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, and so that was really nice. And that night when Katie left the hospital, or I really should say that morning, when she left the hospital, she actually somehow ended up walking out with the doctor, and he was talking to her, and I just thought it was so kind. He looked at her and he just said, that was tough, wasn't it? It's like he really felt bad for me. And I don't say that to throw a pity party, but I just thought that that was very kind. And after I had him, I remember he just come over kind of to the side of the bed and he just put his hand on my shoulder, and he didn't say anything, but it was like, you know, he said it all by saying that. And I was so thankful for him, because I think because of his expertise and his skill, I think that's probably why I didn't end up having to get a C-section. So, but oh my goodness, it's so worth it. I would go through it 10 times over all again to have this sweet precious baby. So what advice do I have for expectant mamas? And then I'll talk more about how God helped me in my birth. And really those two go hand in hand, because that is my biggest advice to any expectant mamas is, you can do this, God will help you, and do not doubt for a second that you can do it. Don't be afraid, don't be scared, do not let fear and anxiety take over. God made you built to birth. This is what he made you to do, among other things, and so you can trust in him, you can trust in that, in the process, and in his wisdom. He designed birth. That's how the earth is populated, is through childbirth, and so you can trust in that, and you can trust your body. People would tell me it's mostly, 80% mental and 20% physical, and that is true. Your body, God designed it to do this. It knows what to do. All you have to do is just manage your mind, because it's tough. When you meet that intensity, your brain wants to say, I can't do this, I won't do this, this is really tough. And all you have to do is just manage your mind, and your body will do the work, and you would be surprised how tough you are. It seems kind of overwhelming and scary, but once you get into it, you are so much tougher than you realize, and your body does just take over. And so much of it is kind of the attitude. Birth is not a medical emergency. Babies are born every single day. There's been billions of babies born before him. Or, if a mama is watching this, billions of babies born before your baby is. It's a very normal thing, and you can trust in the process. Another thing that I want to talk about is the intensity. And I want to talk about this very carefully, because I don't think that expectant mamas that you need to be scared or anything like that. But I watched a lot of videos leading up to his birth, and I even had like an online course that I took, and there was a lot of women who said, if you learn these strategies, you can have a completely pain-free birth, or if you don't learn these strategies, you just won't be able to cope. And a lot of what I was watching was how to do it without an epidural, because I didn't want to get one. But really, these same kind of tactics would apply to any birth, right? Whether you get an epidural or not, because it's hard no matter what. And I know that there are women who say that they have a supernatural birth or a pain-free birth. I 100% believe that. I am not knocking that, especially women who are saying that God blessed them with a supernatural pain-free birth. I absolutely believe that, and I say, praise the Lord. I think that that's wonderful. But I think on the whole, most women experience it as some kind of pain or discomfort in childbirth, and I think that that's kind of just how it is. And so it was helpful for me to be at the birth of my nephew just 3 months before, and obviously that was wonderful to see a life born into the world, especially my nephew. But it also kind of helped me see what it was going to be like and what I could expect. And then going through it myself, it hurts, it's painful, but it's not anything that you can't do. That would be my advice, that even though it's intense and it's hard, it's not anything that you can't do, it's not anything that you need to be afraid of. But I think it would be bad advice for me to tell you, oh, it's not that painful, or if you just do this, this, and this, you can achieve a supernatural pain-free birth. And again, that does exist, and I hope for anyone that they could have a supernatural birth, but I just wanted to touch on that. A few more advice or tips for expectant mamas would be, whether you get an epidural, a C-section, pain meds, induction, or you don't get those, no matter what, birth is hard. And I think every mama is a hero, so do not shame yourself. If you wanted to go in without an epidural and you end up getting one, there's no shame. If you end up having to get induced but you didn't want to, there's no shame. That's just the way that God wanted it to be. So give yourself grace for sure. And there's only so much that you can plan. I think having a birth plan is wonderful. I think that's a great thing. I actually made one and never even handed it to him. It was in my purse, and kind of by the time I thought of it, things were just intense, and I had already told him that I didn't want an epidural, and so I never even handed him my birth plan. But you don't want to get analysis paralysis, where you're trying to craft this perfect birth plan and trying to anticipate every single detail of how it's going to go. It's good to kind of know what you want, and it's good to know how the labor process works, just to know the basics of things, just so you know what's going to happen. That is good, but you don't want to just get so stuck in the details, because analysis paralysis is a very real thing. And also, things sometimes don't go as planned. I had no idea that he would be sunny side up. And once you get into it, if things like that happen, you just have to go with the flow. And it helps to just in your mind know, okay, here's how I would like it to go. But if it doesn't, that's okay. God will help me. I can get through it. Two other things that I want to say as far as advice for expectant mamas would be, you get a break in contractions. That really, my biggest concern was just, well, what if it's just so intense and painful and I can't handle it? You will get a break in contractions. And even when it gets down to the end and before you're going to push in, contractions are very close together, you will still get a break. God is so merciful. That's how he designed it. He didn't design it for us to be in just terrible pain for hours at a time. You will get a break. Lastly, I just want to offer advice on tearing. A lot of women are terrified of tearing, and that's one of the biggest fears. And for whatever reason, that was not a fear of mine. But if you do, it will be okay. And I want to give this advice because I did not have an epidural, and I got almost a 3rd-degree tear. But there's so much pressure. If you tear, you're not going to feel it. I did not feel it at all. And then even though I didn't have an epidural, they just give you a shot to numb you locally and stitch you up, and it's fine. And after you birth a baby, getting stitches is absolutely no big deal. So I just want to offer that advice for any woman who might be scared of that. And one more thing I want to share, I almost forgot for expectant mamas, is just a few things that helped me as far as managing the intensity. So most hospitals do have a birth ball, and that helps if you just want to lean over it, if you want to sit on it, changing positions. If you I'm sure you've heard you could go and get in the shower or use water. Maybe you have a tub at the hospital, or maybe you're going to have a water birth, and I think that can help. But one thing that really helped me was this thing, and I think this came from Amazon, maybe, or maybe not, but I'll put a link in the description either way. But it's called a labor grip, and this thing it's hard to, you just hold it in your hand like that, but it's got a lot of tension on it, and it's hard to push down. And this really helped because it's kind of your instinct when you feel that intensity, you want to tense, but if you do that, it makes it worse. It makes your labor last longer. So having that is nice because you can channel all that kind of tension into one place. So now I want to talk about how God helped me so much in my birth with him. God is just so good, and I just could not have done it without him. And I really feel like it started with just peace in my pregnancy. I just felt like he gave me so much peace, and I tried to lean on him and look to him as best I could, but he's just so good, and he absolutely pursued me, and I just feel like it gave me so much peace, and that is such a blessing. I also prayed that I would go into labor on my own. I wanted to have that experience and not have to be induced, and that was absolutely an answered prayer. I wanted to be able to drive to the hospital in the daytime and not have it be a nighttime trip. That was an emergency, and I had very few contractions in the car, and the whole process of getting to the hospital and getting checked in was very smooth, and that was totally an answered prayer. When I was in triage up in labor and delivery, and I was sitting there, and I actually had my little Bible with me, and of course that was bringing me a lot of comfort, but there was this little bird that come up and landed on the windowsill. And if you've been on the channel, you know that birds just hold a large, I guess, spiritual significance to me. And anytime I see birds, it makes me think about the passage in Matthew in the Sermon on the Mount where Jesus is saying that even the birds he takes care of, so of course he would take care of us. So even that just felt like God was saying, I've got you, I'm right here. And he does that oftentimes just all throughout life. Maybe it's a kind word from someone. Maybe it's a verse that you've been studying and then it shows up somewhere else. Maybe it's a bird, if you have anything like that you like to pay attention to like I do. But he's so good, and he's everywhere. I don't believe in coincidence. I think we can see God as long as our eyes are open and we've got our hearts attuned to him. We can see him in everything. Even when we just look outside, I can look out the window here in front of me and just seeing the trees and the grass and the creek. That's all his creation. So like I said, I did actually have my little Bible with me, and that was in triage before things got, too intense where I couldn't really focus and read anymore. But I was reading, and Psalms 139 is such a wonderful passage, I feel like, for pregnant women, and that was one that I just read so much, especially verse number 7, whither can I go from your spirit? Whither can I go from your presence? And in the little Bible I didn't have my big one, I just wanted to have a little one so it was easy to bring along. There was a reference, like a cross-reference to that verse, and that reference wasn't in my big Bible, so I was very interested to see what that reference said, and it was Jeremiah 23:24. I've got my computer right here, so I'll read you the verse. Can any hide himself in secret places that I shall not see him, saith the Lord? Do not I fill heaven and earth, saith the Lord. This just felt so special to me, and like this little nugget of comfort and wisdom, because I had clung so much to this verse, and here I was to stumble on a verse that this linked back to. And sometimes in life, and especially when I was in labor, you might feel like you're in a secret place, like you're going through something hard, and maybe it's something your family and friends don't even know about, or maybe in my case in labor, there was no one who could do it for me. There was no one who could step in and say, let me give you a break. But even if you feel far away from God, he sees you and he's there. He's saying that there is no secret place. There's no way, there's no place that you can get away from me. I feel heaven and earth, and that was just such a comfort to me. Just such a huge comfort to know that even in that kind of tough time that he will be there for me. And he will be there for you no matter what you're going through that feels tough. He will always be there. Like I said, the doctor was great, and I had some sweet nurses who were helpful, and just the support of my family, of Katie and Austin being there, and all the people praying. So many people were praying for me and Woody, and I just can't tell you how much that means to me. That means the world to me, and I could feel those prayers, absolutely. And I remember when it was close to the end and I was pushing, and it just was tough, and like I said, I was so tired and I was drowsy, and I remember I could hear Katie beside the bedside praying, and that just was so special to me, and I just felt like that was just bringing God just straight into the room, straight to the bedside, where I needed him, and that was so special. And so if you're going through something in life, or you know someone who's going through something in life, go to them and say, can I pray for you? Even if you just sent them a text message, just, hey, can I pray for you? I think that would be a real blessing, because I know that it was to me. I'll also say, I felt like I seen God in my birth, because it's a humbling experience. It's vulnerable, and it's a very kind of intimate thing with whoever is there with you in the room, and it's a vulnerable thing, and even with your family that you're close with, but even with doctors and nurses that you don't really know, you're in a very vulnerable place, and they're helping you bring life into the world. And I think that was kind of a, I don't know if you'd say lesson, but it just was humbling, and of course we need to be humble before the Lord. But where I really felt like I felt God the most was at the end, when I was pushing like that. And I remember just this specific moment, and I really feel like God has, sown this into my spirit and heart, if that makes sense. There was just this moment where I just felt like spiritually, physically, emotionally, mentally, I just hit a wall. Like I just come real fast, real hard, right up to a wall, and I thought, I can't do this. This is painful. I'm exhausted. Why is he not coming out? I just thought, I really just thought, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't think that I have it in me. And I was weighing that against, I don't have a choice. There's no one who can step in and do this for me. But looking back afterwards, as I've had time to digest, I just realized that, wow, that was God helping me, because I absolutely come to the end of my resources in a way that I had never done before. I come just straight up to the end, and I really felt like he just took me and took me somewhere else and just hid me away, and he just somehow took over. He just grabbed me and said, come here and I'll help you rest, and he just took over. And during my pregnancy, I made Bible verse cards, and I've got a video about that, so I'll leave a link in the description. And one of those cards was Psalms 91:4. He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings thou shalt trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. And so I would pray, and I would say, God, when that time comes, just hide me away under your wings, hide me in your tabernacle, in your pavilion, in your secret place. And that's exactly what he did. I just felt like he took me and just took me somewhere else, and he helped me, and he can do the same for you. And that's why I wanted to make this video, for not just expectant mamas, but for anything that you are going through in life. When you come up against that wall and you just think, I can't do this anymore, whether it's a loss of a loved one, or a health problem, or a relationship problem, or anything, all you have to do is say Jesus. That's all you have to do, and he will help you absolutely every single time. I felt like his birth was also a big lesson in surrender for me, and that was another thing that I prayed for, was that God, you just help me figure out what I can do, what I'm actually truly capable of, and then I will surrender the rest to you. And that's exactly what I had to do. I'd done everything I could do, but I couldn't help, or wasn't in control, that he was facing the wrong way. And I just had to surrender that to God and say, all right, I will trust you. I'm just along for the ride here. And it makes me think of Psalms 37, commit thy way unto the Lord, trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. And that was a verse that Katie and I both kind of meditated on for both our births. And he will. All you have to do is say, God, I will commit my ways to you. I can do that because I trust in you. And then he will bring it to pass, whether it's bringing a baby into the world or anything else that you're going through. It also makes me think of 2 Corinthians 3:5. Not that we are sufficient of ourselves to think anything is of ourselves, but our sufficiency is of God. That was another verse that I just really claimed, if you will, for my birth. And I absolutely felt like it came true, because I could only do so much, and my sufficiency to bring him earthside wasn't really up to me. I don't feel like I feel like it was just up to God, and that was just how he saw fit to bring him into the world, sunny side up and all. And he gave me strength. There's so many Bible verses like Isaiah 40:31, and he gave me, and then there's a verse that's before that as well that I had wrote down, but he will give you the strength. All you have to do is call upon him. And I realized later, perhaps maybe my biggest prayer for the whole thing was answered. And as I prayed, I said, God, I pray that my labor will be as fast and as quick and easy and painless as possible. But your kingdom come, your will be done. You have created this child. You know how he needs to be born. And so another one of my prayers was, along with that, was let this be a stepping off place. Because I knew that labor would be hard. I knew that it wouldn't be easy. And I thought, maybe I feel a little bit nervous for this, but overall, I want to pray that this process would make me grow in my faith, that it could just be a stepping off place to grow closer to God, because I knew I would likely have to rely on him in a way that I never had before. And so just a few days ago, before filming this, I was thinking about it, and it hit me all of a sudden, and I felt like, I'm sure this was probably God or the Holy Spirit revealing this to me, him being sunny side up. And so the labor was long. I mean, if you count from like start to finish, from Thursday at 3:30 to Saturday at 3:53 a.m. specifically, that's 48 hours. And just that 2 hours of pushing, had he not been sunny side up and things had went smoother, would I have had to rely on God as much? And I'm not saying that, the harder your birth is, the more God is there. God is present always. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just thinking for myself personally, him being sunny side up and it being that tough, was that not an answer to my prayer that the birth would be a stepping off place to grow in my faith? Was that not an answer? I really feel like it was, because I had to rely on God more than I ever had before. And lastly, even now, once you have a baby, and of course, if you've had a baby, I'm not telling you anything that you don't know, but you worry about every little thing. You hear them breathing and you think, is that really normal? Every little thing, and it's crazy when you're totally responsible for another human life. And even now, though, and this would be advice for expectant mamas as well, or maybe you're already a mama, even now, I have to catch myself and say, God, I'm not gonna look at him like he's defective and say, well, why is he breathing like this? And what about this? And what about this? And oh, what if this happens? No, I'm gonna trust in God's wisdom. I'm gonna trust in God's plan. God made this baby. He made babies strong. He knows what he's doing. And when he makes us mamas, we have this instinct. I've been shocked at how I just know things. It's just like he opens up your head and dumps in all this knowledge and shuts it back. Katie told me that one time, and I told my mom that just yesterday, and she said, well, that instinct and that wisdom was always there. You just weren't ready to use it yet. And I think that's true. But even now, trust in God, and no matter what it is that you're going through and what you're facing, just the attitude and the heart posture is so important. And I used to think the word heart posture seems so, I don't know, new age, but that's a perfect descriptive term. Just the heart of, I'm going to trust God. He knows what's best. And if you are trusting God and you're saved and you're seeking him, then you have to believe that his provision is over every little inch of your life. It absolutely is, whether it's in labor and delivery to bring a child into the world, or whether it's through anything else that you're facing. So I feel like that got slightly long-winded, but it's just my sincere hope that this video will be a blessing to expecting mamas, to all of our YouTube family who have prayed for me and this baby. And again, I just can't thank you enough. That means the absolute world to me. And I hope that it will be a blessing to anyone else who's watching. If you're a man, or you're a woman who's not currently pregnant or don't plan to be pregnant, I hope that this testimony of just how good God is will be a blessing. So leave me a comment, let me know what you think. And as always, God bless you, God keep you, and I will see you on the next one.